Okay, we're recording. Wrong Speed Record Chat number 44. We have Derek Walmsley. Hello, Derek.
Hi, Joe. All right.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm not too bad.
Tell people where you are.
I'm in Leytonstone in East London at my house.
Sweet. We were just saying that because I used to live in Walthamstow, when you look out the back of your house there, it looks exactly like Walthamstow. Like Leytonstone's only about a mile or two away from it. It's so weird to look out the back there. It looks like I could have been your neighbour. It's really odd.
Yeah, I would move to show you the garden, but it's like such a disaster that it's best if I just stay exactly here and you can't see the like kind of horror of my garden. But it's all right. Like, you know, life's nice and quiet here. It's good.
Yeah. So I think we first met when I think I met you through Phil and Stuart. Phil and Stuart from the rock and roll band Southall Riot. But I believe you all worked together at the time.
Yeah, we worked together in Notting Hill Gate at Music and Video Exchange. Me and Stuart worked in the accounts office at the famous Music and Video Exchange in Notting Hill Gate. And Phil worked just round the corner in the singles shop. I don't know if he's ever told you that, but he was like a singles specialist, a 7-inch specialist. And Phil and Stuart, you know, would talk about records and stuff. And so every now and again during his break, Phil would wander into our accounts office and just regale us with tales of like funny or weird kind of singles, or just like general music chat, you know, the kind of thing. But yeah, we and at some point they wanted a keyboard player for their band, or actually I'm not even sure they wanted a keyboard player, but they said do you want to join the band? And I was like, I only play keyboards and not even very well at that. But yeah, they just said, yeah, maybe
they just wanted a Derek.
Unlikely, but possible.
That's my dad's name. It's my dad's name.
Okay, all right.
So this was the band. Got to show you 7-inch because I actually spoke to Phil a whole pile of episodes back. So go check that out for full Southall Riot updates. But I saw the band a whole bunch of times, and also the band I do, our first ever gig was with Southall Riot. So
that was Hey Colossus's first gig was at the Buffalo Bar. Do I remember that correctly?
You do, yeah. 2003.
Yeah.
September.
And I remember it really well. At that time, it was really kind of Sabbathy. I remember Hey Colossus being really heavy and Sabbathy, and it was quite unusual to hear a band like bring a lot of influences together with metal. I don't know if you'd agree, but
maybe
it seemed unusual.
Yeah,
it seemed distinctive.
Yeah, it was good fun. I think I think Phil put the gig on, maybe with Kevin and Resonance FM, and went into the Glass Shrimp name. Trencher also played.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I saw you tell me about the tour you did with Acid Mother's Temple.
Our band Southall Riot, Phil Macy, who's the kind of mastermind and main songwriter, I guess you'd say, of Southall Riot. He sort of described us as being a cross between Flying Saucer Attack and Guided by Voices. So I don't know if you just like the acronyms, but FSA and GBV. And so we went out on tour, and I mean, we didn't really sort of fit anything kind of tightly, if that makes sense. We didn't really consider ourselves to be like particularly similar to any particular bands, or particularly dissimilar to any other types of bands. So we just picked up on people doing interesting independent things who seem to be cool people in the kind of way I'm sure you know. And I can't remember how it happened. I think that tour might have been organized by Swordfish Records in Birmingham, maybe at the time, or I think Andy from Riot Season was involved in organizing the tour as well. And so yeah, Acid Mother's Temple were doing one of their UK tours, and they kind of, I guess, needed someone to go around for some or most of the tour. So you had these kind of building blocks in place of like knowing that at least there was one other band on the bill at any one time. So yeah, we toured and did sort of 7 or 8 or 9 date kind of tour of UK and Ireland. And yeah, I mean, I was already a fan of Acid Mother's Temple. I like them a lot, although there's probably other Japanese psych bands at the time who I was probably more kind of connected with myself, but like Acid Mother's Temple brought something really new and fun to the table. I mean, in a sense, in a sense, they kind of blew us off stage every night. I don't mean necessarily that our band didn't have something distinctive to offer, but just in terms of like volume and playing and impact, they were insanely powerful, especially in those kind of small spaces we were playing in, like Birmingham and Nottingham and Dublin and Belfast and stuff like that. And yeah, actually, the bass player of Acid Mother's Temple, he blew the bass amp, which was borrowed from Southall Riot, on like I think the first night or maybe the first note of their set. He just blew the bass amp, which we were using and taking around for backline. So that was like the first task, the first obstacle of tour was to get a bass amp. Yeah, but it was kind of
the London show. I saw the London show at the garage.
Yes.
And Phil was saying that it was supposed to be upstairs at the garage. If anyone doesn't know, upstairs was smaller, downstairs was like 2 or 3 times the size. It got moved downstairs and it was pretty busy.
Yeah, and it was a big stage. Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, we got really used to, and by that time of the tour, we knew each other's sets really well. I mean, they did the same set every night, but it was a really great set every night, playing the great song they do, La Novia, and that was really heavy and really long. And they, they liked our kind of longer jams, like In the Valley of the Broken Down was a song we did. And yeah, got really used to seeing them. And yeah, it was just awesome being able to see them up close, what they were doing. And, this kind of really close relationship they had with their instruments, particularly Kawabata, the guitarist. He was just kind of completely at one with this insane runaway kind of guitar solo style he did. It was great.
I saw him at the what's it called, Corsica Studios, and like a few years later, so this is probably 2008 or 2009, and they're still like wailing away, how like they do, and like one of the guitarists set himself on fire, and I think he panicked. He was like, he put this like liquid on, like how they do, like to make it look impressive, but I think he pulled it a bit, and he was like, oh. It was terribly funny. Like, he was fine, but as an audience member, it's like, oh, we're getting our money's worth. These boys are setting themselves on fire.
Oh my God, that's ridiculous. Yeah, but they toured so many times. It was like this really regular thing, and they seem to be, so I don't know, maybe they need to keep it interesting or something like that. But yeah, always bando, hold a candle for Acid Mother's Temple.
Yeah. So music-wise, did you do anything else after Southall Riot?
No. I mean, I loved doing stuff with Southall Riot. And do you know there's that quote do you know Robert Beatty, the kind of illustrator? He's an illustrator and he used to be in the band Hair Police, US kind of noise rock band. He does really cool illustrations, really retro illustrations. And he had this great quote about being in a band, which it's like, said something along the lines of, well, the best, if you want to get into some kind of creative endeavor of any sort, he thought the best thing to do was to be in a band, because being in a band introduces you to like networks of creative people outside the mainstream doing all kinds of weird stuff, all kinds of different stuff. And it makes you try things you wouldn't otherwise try. And yeah, long story short, he just had this idea that being in a band, it's the best way to kind of try new creative things and acquaint yourselves with like areas of culture you didn't know existed. I think it's a really cool idea about bands, but you know, I think I also found out that I'm not a particularly brilliant musician as a musician, and I think it takes a lot of skill to even be an average musician, never mind a good musician. And I always just enjoyed writing about music, and just thought I just thought I could offer more writing about music than doing it.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that. But like, just quickly, I just want to quickly talk about, you mentioned networking there. It seems that 50% of the people I speak to worked at Music and Video Exchange at one point. Because Ralph Bass.
Who else?
Ralph Bassclef. He worked
there.
there.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Nice one, Ralph.
Michael Kasparis, the night
guy.
Phil, of course. There was a couple of others. But one of the things, I dug this out before speaking to you, because these things make me laugh still. And so I like showing them. And it's the old stickers that I keep on them, because they just make me laugh, because they destroy the records if you take them off. So just keep them on, like, why not?
Well, there's various different types of stickers, as you probably know, Joe. Yeah. They had various different colors depending on how the glue used to affix them to the record, because in the subterranean kind of subculture of Music and Video Exchange, you would have people who would remove stickers and put different stickers on with different prices. I mean, of course, I kind of have some, but yeah, if you can kind of see, it probably won't focus, but you can see that the prices are written on there. So all you might need to do to change it is to put another sticker on. So they have all kinds of stickers used with all kinds of different compounds, I guess.
Yeah, they were conniving.
Definitely. But there were, although the guy who runs it, Brian Abrams, who's pretty elderly now, but he's a very deeply eccentric guy. But probably one of the interesting stories of hippiedom in London, hippiedom creating a kind of institution for alternative culture, which hasn't really been told really, but yeah, there's some other quite interesting people who came through Music and Video Exchange. I think Ian Hicks of Mordant Music came through Music and Video Exchange. I mean, a lot of other people, a lot of my sort of colleagues in writing came through there. So I'm pretty sure Simon Reynolds spent some time at Music and Video Exchange, and David Keenan spent some time at Music and Video Exchange as well. So lots of people picked up their wage there. Yeah,
well, that's because it was the same in the distribution world. It was like a low-level music industry losers worked.
Sure.
And that's which is what I did. And like I'm still friends with a lot of people from that time. Just because there was a common, like, you meet people who obviously have the similar love of music, you know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, one of the things I love is just quickly is the reduction line here, where you'll start. This went from £2 to £1. I bought this for £1. I love the reduction line in the boxes where you just cross out. Big fan.
Yes, it's still like kind of going back in time. If you go in there, it still feels like a place from the 80s or 90s. Even like, you can almost kind of feel the kind of old dirt in there, and everything's very physical. It's not very computerized. I mean, I don't know about you in distribution though, Joe. I mean, I felt I learned so much on so many levels about music and music culture in those kind of places. And
absolutely,
it was kind of crap at the time, but I look back on it with a lot of fondness.
Oh, I would almost give anything to have a week in SRD again. It was in Tottenham. The Drummond Base was really, really loud. It was all kids from Tottenham working in there who just loved like drum and bass and loved all that sort of music. And it was just really energetic. But it would wear me out, and I sort of hated it at the time, I think. But I look back now and I think, God, I'd do a week there right now. I'd love it. I'd love it. So
it's physically draining though, isn't it? I mean, you're kind of yeah, it's probably not something you can do for a million years, but yeah, but it's really interesting how the kind of economy of record shops has changed as well, you know, long time ago.
Yeah. So you moved on to writing then. Tell me about how you get into that. What is going on?
Yeah, so the easiest way to tell that story is it's a sort of internet story, which is literally when I was at Music and Video Exchange, just pissing about and wasting time. I'd go to a lot of like internet message boards, and this is in the early 2000s, and there was an internet message board for the independent football magazine When Saturday Comes, which is a really great independent publication still going. And there was a message board for that, and it had a very active music section. And I just happened to clock that a lot of the people on it were ex-Melody Maker journalists. And this is in the early 2000s, very early 2000s. And in the mid 90s, the Melody Maker had been definitely one of my Bibles for acquainting myself with all kinds of music. And so lots of writers I knew there, like Simon Price and David Stubbs and Taylor Parks and others. And yeah, somehow I just started writing about music on there and getting in with those people. And then at one point, David Stubbs became reviews editor at The Wire, and I can't remember, he just swung by Music and Video Exchange one day and saw what I was listening to, and he said, do you want to try a few reviews? So in a sense, it's a kind of, I don't know, in a sense, it's a kind of like who you know story, but in another sense, this was at a time when, like, I was doing blogs and stuff around that time. I was doing a blog for quite a while, and in a sense, like, the internet seemed to open up kind of access to writing, or open up access to at least having an opinion on music in quite an interesting way. And so, yeah, I kind of connected with these Melody Maker journalists, and some of them became friends and still are friends. And yeah, I kind of got in with them that way. But it was like, yeah, it's exciting at that time. I was sort of forming friendships with these people, like over the internet rather than real life. But that's how I got to kind of writing little reviews for The Wire.
Yeah, see, I don't think that, like, that's a who you know story, but it's only who you know because of what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? It's not like your dad was the or whatever. Like, it's not like that. It's like you're in amongst it. So things happen in amongst it.
Totally. And I was definitely spending a lot of time, because I didn't have a proper job. I was definitely spending a lot of time just kind of writing and thinking and having an opinion and trying to form arguments, and probably having some arguments about music with all these people. And yeah, it was kind of online subculture, really, of thinking about music and writing about music. So yeah, shout out to When Saturday Comes, because bizarrely it was via this football magazine's forum that I got into writing about music, really.
Did that start out as a fanzine, When Saturday Comes, and then sort of turn a bit more professional?
Yeah, I believe, actually, I'm not sure, but it started out, I think it might be correct to say it came from fanzine culture.
Right. Okay.
And then those people decided to set up a proper magazine, and it started as a very small proper magazine in the early 80s, and became, maybe mid 80s more like, and it became, well known for having a very independent point of view, politically opinionated, and having an opinion about things like the Hillsborough disaster, which no one else would offer. So it's one of those magazines which is like defiantly like independent magazine, and started around the same time, very roughly, as The Wire.
Right. Yeah. So when Wire started, what, 82, 83? When did The Wire start?
82. Yeah.
Wow. And how long have you been? How would you describe yourself there?
I'm the editor now. I started in 2007 as the reviews editor. So digging through the pile of CDs in the office. It probably was mostly CDs at that time as well. Digging through the CDs in the office, thinking about what we could review, thinking about what it would be, what stuff is out there which is interesting. So I started in 2007 and I've been there, 14 years now. It's a unique place to work. And managed to still be arguing about music all these years later.
Like, well, what I mean, I've got Why is one of the magazines that I buy and keep. It's not really the case for all magazines, and I'm pretty sure that most people who buy the Wire probably do keep it. And I don't know whether that's because it's the record nerd in us, or whether we think we're going to go back to a 2007 issue, and I don't know. I did pick up a couple here. Whether I'm going to go back and read about, I don't know, Scott Walker or whatever, or I'm just going to go, oh yeah, no, I never do. I keep them all, and I very rarely go back to them. But for some reason, I can't get rid of them. They're like little books rather than magazines.
Like just on this table here, I have a load of other magazines, old magazines, which I still haven't got rid of. And like one of them is a London Review of Books, which is like literally 10 years old. And I realized I hadn't read it. And some of the writers in it have unfortunately died in the interim. But I don't like easily throw them away because I know what's in there is going to be pretty thoughtful and try and tell me something new. Whether it's true or not, or whether it makes sense or not, or it's maybe another matter. But that's probably what the Wire aspires to as well. I think quite a lot of people do keep them. I hope so anyway.
Yeah, totally. Actually, I just for the hell of it, I picked out a couple of records I bought because of reviews in the Wire.
Oh, go on. Yeah.
So the writing obviously made me buy. I've just picked two just for the hell of it.
Yeah, go on.
One was a CD, and it's a fabric CD, and it's the Logan Samuel or Sama, however you say it.
Yeah.
Fabric compilation, which is
wow.
I don't know who reviewed it. I don't know anything about who reviewed it, but I remember buying it literally because of the review.
And what made you click the buy icon
on
Joe?
this?
What was it?
I think it was. Well, obviously the writing was enthusiastic. I want to get onto that actually. What makes good reviewing? It's interesting to me, but
sure.
I think it was enthusiastic, and also the fact it was a fabric compilation, but it was vocal all the way through, like from start. I guess you know this CD, right? So from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, I know it well. Yeah.
It's like a heavy vocal CD, which is quite rare for a fabric thing. So I think the reviewer had something properly to get his or her teeth into, and it's really it's quite fascinating CD anyway. Like
it's fantastic CD that they Logan Samuel really took a lot of time and effort to get all these vocals from all these kind of grime MCs, not just playing like existing tracks, but like it's almost kind of creating new tracks really. And he'd get some rhythms from a producer, he'd get some vocals from some MCs and put them together. It's like really like knitted together really closely. It's quite an achievement that. It's really cool you bought it.
Yeah, it's not a lazy compilation. Like some compilations you think, okay, this is not a lazy compilation.
No, incredible work gone into that. Yeah,
absolutely. And the other thing, it was actually because it was the album of the year in, I'm going to say 2011.
Yeah.
Any idea?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't remember. Yeah, of course. Right. Know it very well. Yeah.
I go back to it with alarming regularity, this album.
So Far Side Virtual, like, what did you make of it when you played it?
It blew my mind for a couple of reasons. One was, I think, again, musically, it's absolutely fascinating to me. It's something I'd never heard at the time, for one. But for two, because I've got young kids, as we discussed before. So 2011, my children were 11 and 8. Okay. And all the way through this album, there's like startup noises from computers and samples from odd little games that I don't know about or anything else. So my kids' ears were always being pricked up when I played this record. That made it like a family album somehow. It was our rumors. Whatever, it was really weird. But I still love it now because of that. It's because fond memories and everything. I love it.
Yeah, Far Side Virtual is a strange album, and I think it really, really stands up.
Yeah.
I mean, there's really odd and idiosyncratic things about it. Like there's loads of like little just sounds, I think, from the computer game The Sims. So lots of things taken from like the soundtracks to computer games, and like really familiar sounds like Windows startup sounds, blah 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 blah. And I think it really stands up for some reason, but it's a strange record. I remember trying to play it on the radio once, and it was really hard to find something to play on the radio because all the tracks are about 2 minutes long, 3 minutes long, something like that. And yeah, I mean, they have like a really close relationship with like commercials, and not even commercials, but kind of almost like YouTube adverts, the kind of not TV commercials, but the stuff which came afterwards, this music which, it comes on and all of a sudden the music it kind of is almost pushing the buttons of your brain, telling you to kind of pay attention to something or to relax or to kind of, it's a kind of weird record.
It really is. It's like, sort of, there's like put your seatbelt on noises and things like you say, it twigs all sorts of things in your head. And I imagine that someone like, I don't know, I can see like Brian Eno making this. It's like music for something, and I don't quite know what, but not airports and not whatever else. But it's music for something. But it totally stands up, and it's because of the wire. I got it. So
okay, cool. I'm glad you did that, man.
Yeah. So reviews. What do you think a reviewer should be focusing on in a review? Because sometimes I can't work out. I guess everyone's different in how they write. And you must have people there who like go with enthusiasm or go with facts or maybe put their own story on it.
I mean, I think some of the lessons I learned that I really value from Chris Bond and Tony Harrington at The Wire is that music journalism, in many ways, most of it is akin to normal journalism, essentially. So you're trying to tell a story of what something is, why, how it works, why it is as it is, who's behind it. And so these really basic building blocks of what's going on in the thing you're listening to. And it's funny with music writing, because if we think about like people reviewing films, right? When people are kind of like reviewing films, they tell you a bit about the plot, they tell you a bit about where it comes from and stuff like that. Like the standard of journalism, I think sometimes in film reviews is quite high. But weirdly in music journalism, there's this kind of almost kind of a cultural cringe, I think, really, that sometimes people writing about music journalism wanna kind of write about it and just kind of wing it with a kind of rock and roll enthusiasm. Just sometimes, not thinking of anything particular here, just trying to make a general kind of cultural point. But when you think about it, like, the kind of areas of music that we're kind of into, Joe, like there's lots of areas of music where people do kind of things which normal people might find a bit unusual. So, okay, so let's say someone's making music and they're using cassette tapes, and they're using cassette tapes and they're copying one to another, and they're kind of using the way that the tape degrades or something like that. The kind of thing. And to people who are into like maybe mainstream music, that might seem a bit odd, but we, us kind of music nerds, we kind of know there's a reason they're doing that, right? There's a reason they're using these methods. You know, there's a certain context to a lot of those ways of making music, whether that's from, psychedelic rock culture, or, you know, avant-garde kind of culture or whatever. And so there's always a kind of context you can kind of talk about. And so I think that's kind of 80% of what music journalism is kind of considering it as a serious bit of journalism, like any other bit of journalism, I think. And then once you've got that kind of building block in place, I think then you can kind of use it as a springboard to bring other stuff in, whether that's kind of, your kind of like own emotional narratives, or some kind of weird philosophy of life which you picked up from somewhere, or critical theory or something like that. So it's this kind of thing where you've got this kind of building blocks of kind of like, hopefully the kind of, you know, solid journalism which takes all this sphere of culture kind of seriously, and then tries to kind of write something about it, and then some kind of magic on top of it, I guess. I'll just move this cat out the way.
No.
Sorry about that. Whoops. So that's kind of like an important lesson I kind of learned. And that with that kind of lesson, I think it's a lesson just about taking things which some people find weird seriously. You know, I mean, you're in a band that's been around for 20 years, and there must be some reasons you're still doing it. And I know some of those reasons are quite kind of, you know, personal and very important to you. And so it's just a case of like trying to, I think good music journalism is a case of just trying to take the art of music really seriously, and trying to take it on its own terms as well. You know, if someone's using a tape recorder to make music, why are they using a tape recorder? If someone's creating like a massive wall of noise, why might they be doing that? And just trying to take it seriously on its own terms.
Yeah, like I the thing that I can never fully grasp, because occasionally I might try writing or whatever, and I can never get my head around how much opinion I'm supposed to give on why I think they're doing what they're doing, or whether I should actually somehow find out genuine, like, why they're doing it. Like, you know, do you know what I mean? Like, is it my job to give my opinion on what I think the reason that they're doing what they're doing?
Yeah, that's the $64 million question, isn't it? I mean, I think also though, there's an interesting thing with music whereby, of course, like artists have their own reasons for doing stuff, but then like our opinions as kind of listeners and, well, maybe critics or whatever, that's a valid opinion as well. You know, everyone's opinion has its own validity, and we as listeners might pick up something in the music which no one else does, or make a connection which might seem unlikely to the people who made it, but actually has some kind of relevance to what they're doing. So yeah, you know, there's got to be some independence of thought in there as well. Yeah.
And I guess also with all art, once it's left the pencil or left the microphone or left whatever, how much of it is it the artist anymore? Like this is my CD. It's not his CD. So my opinion on it is my opinion. So when you're reviewing, is that how you should do it? It's like, okay, yeah, now it's mine. Now I'm going to write about it. Like
it's sort of impossible to answer that question, but I think it's an interesting idea to have in your head. Is, well, you know, when people put stuff out into the world, you know, they might have, when they release music, there might be various motives, you know, which might be present. Lots of them might be present. I mean, people might want to, you know, for instance, just make money from music. That's possible. But people might want to put it out and share it to try and kind of reach like-minded souls and so on. And so, well, it's like, well, if you are putting something out publicly, you're kind of taking that leap of faith, and you're hoping that listeners are going to meet you halfway. And that the reason that relationship, I think, is special is because people make up their own minds, and then people, hopefully, find some points of communion and or connection with your music because they've come to it with an independent mind. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Music journalism I find quite tricky, but when done well, it can influence people to buy records. Which is
one thing which I think seems really fascinating to me about music journalism is because, music is just these kind of vibrations in the air, which are kind of ever changing. And so, it's really hard to pin down sometimes what you're talking about and what its value is. I mean, you might have like a banging club track, which feels really banging to you, but it might have a completely different feel to someone else. Like I was listening to some deep house the other day. I was listening to like Masters at Work, which was amazing. And, you could take that as being very celebratory music, or you could take it as being quite reflective music, or both. And so one thing I think is kind of fascinating with music journalism, for me at least as a writer, is this thing of trying to build an argument on these kind of ever shifting building blocks. It's like kind of trying to kind of walk across. It's like a kind of game of Frogger. Frogger, the kind of retro video game where you're trying to cross a road, but everything's kind of moving all the time. And I quite like that kind of flow of it, where you're trying to kind of blaze a path through this music and your experience of it. But kind of music's a chaotic thing. It's changing all the time. It's very different to a film where you can sort of say, oh yeah, and by the way, in the middle of the film, it turns out that the good guy is not the bad guy after all. I mean, that's kind of just a fact in a film, whereas often in music, there's no kind of structural elements to the plot you can kind of build on. Anyway, long story short, I love this idea.
I wouldn't want my reviewer of a film to tell me that halfway through a film, the bad guy turns into the good guy. They have to avoid that, right?
They always do, though, don't they? It's really annoying. Like, I mean, they don't tell you what happens at the end, but they always allude to some of the surprises of a film. I mean, it's funny, actually, because if I know I want to see a film, then I don't want to know anything about it beforehand, actually. And sometimes this is extended to kind of music with me as well. Like, if I know people who I value really love something, often I just want to listen to it. I don't want to be told anything whatsoever.
So we'll probably move back to Wire magazine as we go through, but let's talk about your records, and maybe we'll switch back and forwards. So as ever, I send a list. It's the same list. Let's start. A record from your favorite record shop.
Okay, so there were going to be there's two record shops I think are kind of which have a real affectionate place in my mind. And one is the Soho record shop Black Market, which used to have house music upstairs and drum and bass downstairs. At least it did when I moved to London in about 1998. And that was just a really remarkable shop for many, many reasons. I'll show you a couple of the things I bought from there. This is both on metalheads, actually. So this is, I'll just make sure I can see what I'm showing you if I do that. Yeah. So a couple of records on metalheads by Optical, To Shape the Future. This is one of those records which kind of circulated on dubplate for absolutely ages before coming out. Really tight, technical, dark but funky, amazing track, To Shape the Future. And codename John, aka Groove Rider, and The Warning. Deep and dark.
Metalhead's logo is so distinctive, isn't it?
Super cool, isn't it? Yeah, there was some art project where they projected it on a building recently, wasn't there? Anyway, so Black Market Records, like here's what was beautiful about Black Market Records was it was in Soho, and it was 2-level record shop, and you go in, you walk past the house section. I mean, I wasn't interested in house at that stage, and you go down the stairs, and the stairs I think were quite extensively soundproofed, so they had these foam things on either side. So immediately it's like walking into very futuristic. This is Bo the cat, by the way. He loves computers. So immediately you're in this quite weird kind of futuristic space with these kind of all these big blocks of foam on the stairs, and it was pretty loud when you got there. So that must have been why they had these things on the wall. And if I remember correctly, at one time in the late 90s, the walls were kind of very silvery as well. It was kind of a weird decision, but it was a very futuristic looking shop. And the person I remember working behind the counter most was the DJ and producer Ray Keith, who made some amazing tracks like The Terrorist.
Yeah.
And you know, despite making really tough as hell drum and bass, he was friendly in a way which was really remarkable. Like if you went there on a Saturday to Black Market Records, he would just basically play records, and he would create piles for all the people shopping in the shop. It's like, okay, I want that one, and he'd put it on your pile. I want that one, he'd put it on your pile. And so he would really just play these tracks, and people would stick their hands up. It was almost kind of like an auction type vibe. And it was just really fantastic. You know, if you wanted to have your own pile, you just like give him the nod, I guess, a bit like an auctioneer or something, and he'd create a pile for you. And yeah, his ability to kind of work the room, I don't know, he was like really generous with his time and attitude and stuff like that. And yeah, it was just really, really fantastic. So that's one shop. But I want to tell you about.
Have you ever been to auction?
A record auction?
No. Just like a normal auction, like a.
No, I haven't. Although I nearly went to a record auction one time, which was a reggae record auction in Stoke Newington. But we turned up too early, and there was no one there. And then, yeah, it was I don't know. It was almost like this kind of secret society of like auctioning really rare Roots LPs. But yeah, I've never been to an auction.
I haven't. I'd be scared of like buying a thing, accidentally buying a grand piano.
Yeah. Well, Black Market was so great because it was so welcoming and stuff. You know, it was a remarkable record shop.
Yeah. And your second shop you had?
I'm going to tell you about that after I just go and check something very briefly upstairs with my family, if that's okay. So if you just give me one moment.
Okay. See its reflection there. Look at that.
Okay, I'm sorry about that delay. So I want to tell you about a record shop which is as different as it could be, but it's definitely one of the most remarkable record shops I've ever been to, which is a shop called Gelber Music in Berlin. And it's a record shop where they sold, I think it's closed down now, unfortunately. They sold like really avant-garde modern composition CDs. It was just CDs. The name of the proprietor unfortunately escapes me. I think Ursula Block, I think. And there was someone else who worked at the shop called Werner Durand, and Werner Durand releases pretty cool, interesting music. He creates wind instruments. Anyway, so Gelber Music, right, I was taken there by my colleague at The Wire, Chris Bond, who knows Berlin really, really well. He knows all these kind of nooks and crannies in Berlin, which, you know, interesting record shops and all kinds of stuff. Like his sense of place is amazing, but his sense of direction is terrible. So we kind of went in about 5 different directions before finding this shop. but then suddenly, after going all the way around different bits of Berlin for a while, he was just like, oh yeah, and the shop is right here. And he was like, shit, this shop was right here. And Gelber music was almost had the vibe of kind of just a small office or something like that, really. And it was a small shop, and Gelber music as a whole probably had no more than about 300 or 400 CDs in it. And if you think about how many CDs 300 or 400 is, that's really not a lot. Maybe it was a bit more than that, but really not much, just in these kind of little baskets. And I bought a load of things on the great modern composition label, Editions RZ.
Right.
One of the greatest record labels ever. This is a collection of work by David Tudor. The design on the front is the words Tudor broken up and moved up and down. And they use this design on all these kind of CDs. This is a Jacob Allman CD, and this is a John Cage CD. You can see a C there, so you kind of get some sense of how the design works. But Editions RZ is an amazing label where this is John Cage. What is it? John Cage, Klang de Wandlungen. Everything on Editions RZ is amazing, and the quality of it, quality recordings, quality curation, where they put together really interesting recordings by composers. It's just amazing. And also, I mean, this sort of stuff, David Tudor, it's just completely badass. And this is like as hard noise as you could ever kind of get. What do we have on here? I can't see, but I think it's got things like Rainforest and maybe Pulsars and stuff on here. And that's some pretty mad, hardcore electronic music. So these are the kind of things I picked up in Gelber music on the Editions RZ label. Jacob Allman, David Tudor, John Cage. I just love these things. They're remarkable. But Gelber music was a mad experience in there because, as I say, so few CDs, but you just felt like you could just reach out your hand and you could just grab a handful of CDs and you knew whatever it would be remarkable, modern or postmodern, kind of contemporary, avant-garde, boundary breaking, classical stuff. It was just amazing. And can
you think of any other record shops that are so tightly curated as to just be like just that? They're not stocking everything. They're just like totally focused so tightly. I could not. You always hear tales of places in Japan, don't you? Like a kind of a reggae shop in Japan, like Dub Store or something, where every single thing they have is just incredible. And I mean, from a different direction, Hard Wax is kind of very rigorously curated, I think. Whatever you get in there, it might be house music or disco or techno, but it will be of quality. But no, I don't think I can. Maybe I don't have enough money to spend in these record shops, but that's quite bold move, isn't it, to have a place and just totally sort of like, we're not stocking you two in here. We're just focusing.
I mean, an interesting one in the context of like my experiences at the Wire magazine is the shop Sound 323, which used to be in Highgate in London, in North London. And I lived in Archway in North London, and the road up to Highgate was kind of a bit of a kind of grimy, charmless road. And then you get to Sound 323, which I think at some points you had to ring the doorbell. This is Mark Wastel's shop, really brilliant shop, selling improvised music and like Sun Ra and all kinds of weird stuff, a lot of Japanese stuff and so on. That had a similar vibe, curated vibe.
Yeah, was that there was a record shop there called Second Layer as well.
Yeah, that was in the basement. Yeah.
Yeah, we used to, like, whenever we drove north, so if we were playing a gig, we'd start in London and everyone get in the van, but we'd very often swing by and park right outside Second Layer essentially and go in there on the way out of London when we went north.
So the first thing you do when you go on tour is to stop at a record shop. That's ridiculous.
Well, it happens. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I'm not criticizing, because Hey Colossus could teach anyone about being on the road, but it seems a very risky decision to stop after 5 miles.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because it was perfect because it's on the left-hand side.
Okay.
So it made sense. Like, there's no parking on the other side. Like, you park on the left-hand side right outside the shop on the way out of London. Pop in and head north.
Get some CDs for the van, yeah.
Yeah. But we used to love that Second Layer, and those two shops together were really nice. But you're
yeah,
right.
It's a really potent combination, Second Layer, with these kind of like noise stuff and fucked up rock music and stuff like that. It's powerful stuff.
I'll tell you what, hopefully picked up an old enough wire here. I might not have, but I heard about that shop because of adverts in here.
Yeah.
I used to advertise every single week in this section here. Unfortunately, I've obviously picked up one that doesn't have that, but
yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. There were a few record shops I picked up from that very section myself in the days before I worked at the Wire. Like, certainly Boomcat would have been the first time I picked up on that.
Everything. It's just like the cat doing like a
poo.
Anyone, that's the Boomcat. They would take up 2 spots with just like a digital cat, like doing a piss or something next to a bomb.
Oh, I thought it was having a poo. Oh. Well. But yeah, that was the first time I ran into Boomcat, and I was like, "What is this?" Yeah. This would have been about probably the year 2001, something like that. I'm not quite sure when, but early-ish internet, and pick up some fantastic stuff there. Yeah.
By the way, I think you're right. I think the cat is clearly shitting itself because it's about not pissing itself.
The music is so amazing that the cat is shitting itself.
Yeah, it looks like piss though. Record with memories.
Yeah, I kind of struggled with this for a reason I'll tell you. Yeah, the record, I've actually sort of gone for record shop with memories, if that makes sense. And it's a little bit different to the record shops I talked about already. But the record shop I'm going to talk about is Pure Groove Records on Holloway Road on 679, I think, Holloway Road, which was there till about probably 2004, something like that. And 679 Holloway Road, that was also, I think, where 679 Records was based, which was their record label. I think either owned or kind of part owned by Mike Skinner of the Streets. Yeah, and that put out some fantastic music at that moment when grime was just flirting with the mainstream. But the record shop Pure Groove Records in Holloway in North London, that's really kind of ground central of kind of two-step garage in around 1998, 1999. Maybe year 2000, something like that. And that was a really wicked shop. And the reason this came to mind is just that is just a record shop where every time I went there with a spring in my step and emerged with a spring in my step. Like, the music was really fantastic at that time. Two-step garage, it's like maybe the greatest music ever made. And you just go in there and there'd be fantastic records there. The two which I happened to just pick out is both on.
Is it Locked On?
Yeah, this is both on Locked On, which is the in-house label of Pure Groove Records. So yeah.
I recognise that the first one you showed, it had, and then it appeared. But yeah, I remember the design of the sleeves. Yeah,
totally. And like Destiny by Dem 2 was like a real, it was just kind of one of those tracks like Eskimo by Wiley a few years later, which just changed the dynamic of the whole music. But this is their in-house record label, Locked On, the label of Pure Groove Records. And yeah, just yeah, I don't, what memories would I associate that with being? It just seemed like a really exciting time in UK music. You'd go in there and there'd be like so many remixes of stuff in a two-step garage style. So I remember walking in there one time trying to buy a two-step garage remix of It's Not Right, But It's Okay by Whitney Houston, which is a great song. And there were loads of great versions of it. And the guy in there was just like, you know, there's just so many versions of this. Which version, which two-step garage version do you want? And it was that kind of shop where there was just so many different kind of choices, and you were really, really, I don't know, you felt you were really close to the printing press, you know, as it were. You know, you kind of go in there and I remember buying a two-step garage remix of LFO by LFO. And it was just random stuff which you didn't really see elsewhere. And it just seemed you were really close to the means of production of this stuff. You know, you could almost see it just kind of coming out the back of a box and being flung on the shelf. If it's not too much of a detour, there's some other. Yeah, I got a similar thing when I used to go to Uptown Records in Soho in the early days of grime, and these are all kind of, I think, Wiley, or maybe just most of them are Wiley productions. You could say they're Morgue, Colder. Just trying to figure out with the camera, and just the way they're just black marker pen. Which one haven't I shown you? Yeah, Ice Pole. And so just the fact that there were these records scrawled with black marker pen, almost kind of like bummed on the shelf. All of these records are fantastic records.
And
of course,
you were buying them as a fan rather than a DJ.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I was never much of a DJ. I was buying them as a fan. Yeah. It's odd, really. Like when you're a fan of this kind of music, you want to have the real thing, don't you? You want this artifact of underground culture. You want it in your hands so that it's preserved, that you're never going to lose it. You can go back to it and remind yourself of this moment in underground culture. So there, yeah, that was why I was buying vinyl. And sometimes I've had times in my life, I don't know about you, Joe, I've had time when I've been buying vinyl where, I don't know, I might not even have a record player, or my record player might be a bit screwed up or something like that. And so, yeah, there were times when I'd just be buying these things just to keep, so I knew I could go back to them if I could. So, yeah.
It's I've said it numerous times, but for me, it is my library, my world library. My own life is told in the story of this stuff, and it's something. And I'd be interested in your opinion on it, as you're sort of, you know, you're working in print media in a magazine that still seems to be doing really well in the world of print media, which is obviously suffering in its own way, like physical media. And like now you've got children, and my kids have never bought a record in their whole life, or any music in their whole life. Like, where do you think it all stands? Like, what is the future of it?
Like, well, I mean, just to kind of pick up on, I mean, I have this weird thing with, this is why I struggled with this question of, you know, record with good memories kind of thing, because sometimes you hear people talk about records, and sometimes people say things like, well, you know, the really important thing about this record is what it reminded you of your life at the time. And that's never really been for me. You know, these records remind me of the music. I'm trying to understand and trying to trying to understand that music and trying to find my place and my experience in the music, you know. And so when people talk about this idea of, oh, a record reminds me of your, you know, your time in your life, it kind of does, but really, actually for me, the records kind of just remind me of the music itself, and where the music was at that time and what the story of the music was, if that makes sense. You know, you could, so there's that. And I guess my other thing with collections of records or CDs and stuff like that is that, you know, I don't know about you, but my experience of having a collection is sort of ebbed and flowed a lot over the years. I mean, my records and my CDs, they're really, really important to me. And also it's like, you know, important is this physical medium, like, which are like primary sources, which tell you something about the culture, you know what I mean? Yeah. They're really important as that. But at the same time, there's been times in my life where I've kind of wanted to make sure that I'm not beholden to my record. So I've shown you a lot of like 12 inches and stuff here, but there's been times when I've actually like had a less strong connection with dance music and DJ culture and more interested in something else. And so I've never wanted to kind of be owned by my records, or like feel like my records weigh down on me. Yeah. This is a bit of a convoluted answer, but there's been times when I've kind of thought, okay, I just need to explore some different relationship with music now. Like I can remember that in the download days where I'd be like, okay, I want to just be listening to downloads for a while. And because I thought, well, downloads maybe offer you a way of having a different relationship with music where you're maybe a little bit more, if you like, kind of color blind and format blind and genre blind, if you see what I mean. And so, you know, there've been times when I've had a ebbing and flowing relationship with records and CDs. Like, yeah, there are times when I buy a lot of records and other times I don't buy a lot. And I really proactively try and do something else with music, if that makes sense. You know, there's been times when I've tried to, I don't know, just recently with The Wire, we've done an issue all about radio. And that was certainly a time for several months of this year where I was just proactively trying to think about radio as a way of like doing innovative music and stuff. So yeah, kind of, I have a kind of ebb and flow relationship with collecting records and collecting CDs.
Okay, yeah, I struggle with. I personally struggle with like the relentless nerdiness of it versus my need for new things and new. It's odd. It's an odd world, especially now with like constantly buying online all the time, more than shops. Where I live, I don't live near record shops, so I'm barely going into record shops anymore. And that used to be something I really liked. So I've sort of replaced that as well. Like it's odd. Like I don't really know where I stand on it, but I haven't stopped.
Like you've been doing this for probably 10 years or so, like buying predominantly online, and you're still like reflecting on the pros and cons of that change.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, and I miss the social side of the record shop. I do miss the social side. But yeah, no, my point really was, and it's something I've asked many times to other people. So if anyone's heard this question before, I apologize. It is, what are, in 50 years time when my kids are 70 and 60 or whatever, and they've got no, like, you know, they don't have any records and don't have any CDs or whatever other physical media is around, and they don't have any of it, how are they going to remember that when they were 15, whatever they were listening to then was so important, and they could do with listening to it and getting that sort of weird like tingle flashback thing, and they're not going to be able to scroll through their 2070 phone and find what they were listening to in 2015. I don't.
No, I find I find that hard to get my head around as well, that, if I love doing playlists on Spotify with my mates and stuff, but, I am cognizant that at some point, I might not be able to access those playlists, or those playlists might change if some of those artists change what they allow to be played by Spotify and stuff. And so, yeah, those kind of things do bug me. And certainly, to extend the relationship to books and stuff, I really massively value books because, I kind of know I'm not going to lose them. I know they're accessible and I can get to them. And it's probably the main thing in favor of physical media, I think, is that, I think it's just more compatible. As long as you can get a record player or a CD player, you're compatible for a good 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years, fingers crossed. It seems so different with technology, where after 10 years that can count as obsolete or antique technology, so those things do keep me awake a bit at night. I'm not massively kind of precious about record collections and stuff like that, but I am precious about what they can offer me in terms of, me being able to know I have them and know that I'll always be able to access them pretty much.
No, well, that's my thing. I discuss it a lot. It's one of those, I don't know, friends round 1 a.m. Let's flick through. Oh yeah, do you remember we used to like Motley Crue? Or, do you know what I mean? We remember when we were 12, Motley Crue, or whatever you were into, and it's just right there, and it's there, and it's not something you have to. Anyhow, I can get tied up with this because
totally. It is really interesting, and here's another angle of that, Joe, is that let's say someone said, "Oh, okay, I've put together a killer Spotify playlist of stuff we used to listen to back in the day," and it's like, okay, I've got it here. That's great, but then, are you going to be able to access that on your computer or your partner's computer or your wife's computer? Maybe not. And so it kind of all of a sudden becomes a kind of cryptic thing about, it can become frustrating.
Yeah, exactly. And websites die. If you were a band that uploaded all your stuff onto MySpace, see you later. It's not there anymore.
Yeah, it's a problem which comes up a lot, is the issue of underground culture relying on really big technology giants, especially if it's relying on technology giants which are kind of sometimes making a loss. Spotify's relationship with the artists it has on there could change significantly without us having any control over it, and that's a bit kind of haunting. It's weird, isn't it? Owning stuff can become just pure kind of consumer fetishism, but it can also be something which gives you some degree of power.
Whoa. Okay.
Joe, I don't think we're going to solve that tonight.
No. Hit me with a bargain find.
Oh, I don't know if I looked for that, but I can conjure something up, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah, I can kind of find some.
So I have this thing about bargain finds where it's not often about the fact that you've bought something that you found it for £1 and it's actually worth 1,000. It's more that you've bought something for an amount of money and you've had way more than your value for money from it. It doesn't necessarily need to be a quote unquote bargain.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Actually, this would be a good one. But I used to buy a lot of reggae and roots from Music and Video Exchange, and this would, I think, have been one of them, which is Ina Kamosi's, it's just a self-titled mini LP, I think. It's only got 6 tracks on this mini LP. One of those tracks is World of Music, and World of Music is the famous Damian Marley, out on the streets, they call it murder. It's that vocal sample. An absolutely amazing track, World of Music, with Sly and Robbie on the bass section here. So this, man, I don't think this is in very good condition. I think I got this for £3 maybe from Music and Video Exchange, and I bought a lot of roots music from there. And sometimes roots music, sometimes even if it's scratched, that still has a charm and a charisma about it. And this would have been one of these. This is not in brilliant condition. Ina Kamosi, oh God, it absolutely bangs. It's a fantastic thing. So if you go into any music situation, people would love listening to that. Yeah.
Any music situation.
Whatever.
And okay, so the next one I got is I got bought on tour, and you can treat it however the hell you want to.
Yeah. So I don't think I bought many things when I was on tour, but I have bought, of course, millions of things when people were on tour and I visited their merch desk. But this is just one which really stands out in the mind. These are CDRs, actually, funnily enough, on the new, so this is on New Age discs. So I believe that was the label of James Ferraro of Far Side Virtual Vibes fame. So these are CDRs on New Age discs. This one is by Para, who I remember playing on a Cafe Auto bill one time with the Skaters, James Ferraro and Spencer Clark.
Yeah.
And God, it's got no information about this at all.
They were the times.
With this, really druggy artwork, which is really awesome, and probably actually literally burnt off maybe a laptop or something. They would just have loads of these selling on tour for maybe, it might have been £3 or £5 each, and you could get like 4 for £10 or something like that, or maybe 4 for 20. I can't really remember. But they're awesome. They're really weird psychedelic noise, really wacko writing on the back. It says, "I burn my past disasters by blood-filled candlelight. I arise from the smouldering cave, a new self." Really, somewhat influenced by New Age stuff, of course, as the New Age label indicates, but just weird, wild, psychedelic noise. And this, I just value these because these would have only really been sold on tour or maybe from some specialist shops and stuff like that. And I love these. These are nuts. And that's that's what we're in it for, isn't it? Like new experiences and just weird, wild things.
That's CDR culture or whatever. That was big, wasn't it, for a good sort of 5-year window? I'd say maybe a 10-year window, sort of. Early 2000s, 2010ish.
I think it was pretty cool. You had these things which were really produced in very small runs, and it's quite special. Kind of buying something which there was only 30 of or 50 of or something like that, and they could be a lot of fun.
Yeah. There's argument maybe there's only an audience of 30 or 50 for them, but that's what's beautiful about it, because they didn't have to go and make 500 of them and be left with 70.
Yeah, but they might be making one album a week or something like that. I suppose at some stage that can go too far in another direction where you're just repeating yourself a lot. But some CDR culture threw up some really fun stuff for a while.
Yeah. What we got here? I got a record that people wouldn't think that you would dig.
Okay. It's gone somewhere.
I'm trying to guess what it'll be.
So yeah, it's not this, but I did put here my favorite record of all time.
Oh yeah.
This is not actually, this is the remix of my favorite record of all time, which is Walk Drive by DJ Crystal, Drummond Base from 1993. For some reason, I can't find the original, but this record label, DJ Recordings, was really wild and futuristic drum and bass for about 2 or 3 years. Really fantastic stuff. So DJ Crystal, yeah, that's my favorite. That's probably my most valued record is Walk Drive by DJ Crystal. I'm not sure it's really a valuable record, but I love it so much. Yeah, so this is the one which maybe people might not think I'd dig. This is Vogue by Madonna, the 12-inch, which I would have bought in my hometown of Reading, probably about 1989 when it first came out. I mean, it's a track I really love. I think it's fantastic, Vogue. And what I think is really cool about it is, well, for a start, I mean, I think it's a really good track, but that's kind of by the by. I could tell you why I think it's a really good track, but that's kind of by the by. But what I really liked about this was, these are, I guess, some of the first 12 inches I bought were 12 inches in around the late 80s. And I would have bought things like Enjoy the Silence by Depeche Mode as well. And I mean, vinyl was pretty unfashionable at this time. A lot of pressings were really quite poor. And so it wouldn't necessarily be the option you'd immediately take to buy a 12-inch, but I did with this and some other things, and I mean a few other Madonna tracks as well. But what I really liked about what world this introduced me to was the world of remixes. So this is a 12-inch version by Shep Pettibone, and he would do these kind of re-edits and remixes of things like Madonna, probably Depeche Mode as well. You know, he was just one of those remixers who just seemed to remix everyone for a period of time. And a lot of the Shep Pettibone remixes I thought were really fantastic. Probably, you know, even things like another group who I listened to a lot of the time, which was Erasure. He would do 12 inches for them as well, I think. You just see his name everywhere, Shep Pettibone, in the same way that you would see Jelly Bean Benitez everywhere. And so they had, those kind of remixes had a kind of interesting relationship with Latin music on the kind of East Coast, I guess. You know, I think, you know, Jelly Bean Benitez, I think, you know, would have been involved in the Latin freestyle world in the early 80s. And so they had this kind of real, you know, they were really from the club scene. They were of the club scene. They were properly ingrained in that world. And Shep Pettibone, likewise. So that was just my beginning of starting to look for remixes and also remixers and the names of them and so on and so forth.
So I guess,
and so that,
around that time, I guess that singles were allowed to be released on numerous different like formats. They limited at a certain point, didn't they? Chart-wise, you could only have like a small, I can't remember how it worked, but there was a point where you could have like 12 inches with hundreds of remixes on, like from Frankie, you know, like Frankie Goes to Hollywood would release numerous versions of the same thing. So it gets charts, because if you as a Frankie Goes to Hollywood fan, you'd buy 10 versions of the same single.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I think it was an open market then for a lot of remixers who would like coin it in because
I think you're right. And of course, the whole weight of the music industry could be behind, obviously, a megastar like Madonna. So they could just pour money into a 12-inch campaign, which probably if she was wanting to move towards, you know, a dance music direction, as she did with Vogue, which is like, you know, it came out a really brilliantly done version of house music, which emerged not too long after proper house music was hitting the charts, and they brought kind of really subtle things to it, like really brilliant bass lines and piano lines and stuff like that. But if they wanted to move to something like that, they could just get like 20 remixes to as a like kind of battering ram.
No, exactly. Yeah. She was very New York, wasn't she? Like in terms of her influences and whatnot, especially at the beginning.
Yeah. She kind of came out of the club scene, didn't she? She kind of she went to New York in a taxi cab and just crashed the club scene or something.
I can't pretend to know a great deal, but I know like she ended up like, I think she toured with the Beastie Boys and all this sort of stuff. It's quite
right. Okay, probably.
Yeah, it's quite. Okay, the last subject I have is regarding the 10-inch. Well, I have one here, and it's from a recent cover star of The Wire, and it's my most. I'm going to show my most irritating 10-inch record, but it was.
Give me a clue. Is it? What could it be?
Well, I can tell you what. It's a quadruple 10-inch, and I think he was on the cover about either within the last 12 months or the last 18 months.
Is it Thundercat?
It is Thundercat.
Okay.
Boxer, and this was the vinyl version of this album.
Oh wow! Okay, fantastic.
Quadruple 10-inch, and it plays at 45 RPM. Each side is no more than about 7 minutes. Is it quadruple? Or maybe it's triple. Yeah, because it's one. No, it is quadruple. I've just screwed up the packaging. Yeah.
Oh, that looks brilliant. That looks lovely.
Yeah, I got it from Flashback in Essex Road there. But yeah, it's insanely frustrating to listen to.
Yeah, I was going to say, it must be quite weird to listen to. Why do you think people don't like 10 inches? I love 10 inches.
I don't know. I think they're the right format for the right thing, but the wrong format for a lot of things.
Yeah, okay. I dig that. That makes a lot of sense. Some of the things I really love about 10 inches are, well, particularly if it's like a band or something. I love hearing people doing 4 or 5 or 6 songs as opposed to 10 or 11 or 12. I really like the kind of consistency of vision, like the kind of mini LP kind of brings sometimes. And so there are some 10 inches I really love on that basis. But also probably I really like 10 inches just because with drum and bass, obviously the dub plate would always be 10 inches and they look really cool. I can't explain why, they just do. But I think it actually sometimes really focus the vision of the producer or the musician quite effectively. So if you're doing a 12-inch, you know, the temptation is to just kind of disco it out, to kind of disco mix it out, to kind of extend, to just think of it as an extended version. Whereas sometimes the 10-inch people are really much more concise. Well, that's what goes on in my head when I think about 10 inches anyway. So yeah, this is some of the things I was going to talk to you about with 10 inches. So I immediately thought of this one, which is a group called Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, a drum and bass group. I think Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse were Foul Play, the group who were well known and very successful on Moving Shadow. I think they were Foul Play. And this is a series of remixes of a fantastic track by them called Drowning in Her. And that was it was a sort of time when, like, Simon Reynolds wrote a bit about this, but you know, this track's called Drowning in Her. And these tracks were kind of very much that kind of feeling of like Euphoria and Fear kind of mixed into one, maybe. I mean, the group is actually called Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, so it's quite an evocative name. And Drowning in Her is just so fantastic track. This is a number of different remixes. I actually have, these are 2 10 inches of, I guess I have 4 remixes in the total here, including remixes by Aphrodite and the great Steve Gurley, who was part of Foul Play and also did a lot of 2-step garage. So yeah, just when I bought these records, I would have bought these records probably in Reading, I think, either from HMV in Reading, which had a surprisingly competitive vinyl section, or maybe from a truly great shop called Vinyl Distribution, which was both a distributor and a record shop. That was one of the main conduits for a load of drum and bass records, including Metalheads and Groove Riders label Prototype and stuff like that. So I would have bought it from one of those things. I can remember like vividly taking it home. And of course, what's the first thing you do when you get a 10 inch? You got a 10 inch for the first time. What's the first thing you kind of think about when you're putting it on the record player?
Well, I don't know. You want the needle to land in the right place.
What speed do I play it at?
Yeah, well,
like, yeah, obviously you play at the wrong speed. That's your brand, isn't it? You know? But yeah, like I had no idea what speed to play it at, and that kind of, these are 33, I think, and that kind of, yeah, it seemed to kind of sum up the kind of weirdly kind of plastic and quite kind of abstract and strange world of drum and bass, futuristic world of drum and bass, where you weren't quite sure if something was at the right speed. You put it on, you know, sometimes you'd like put it on 45 or something. You'd be like, that sounds crazy fast. But then you're like, oh, hang on, but this is crazy fast music. Like, could that possibly, maybe that's correct. And so you had this weird plasticity of the sound. And yeah, that's why I kind of loved those 10 inches. Can I show you my favorite ever label for 10 inches?
Oh my God.
Which I truly love, is the Belgian label Ocrana, who, if I show you these are, some of the artists on these 10 inches include Ed Askew, a kind of freak folk kind of guy, I guess you'd say, who might be nearing his 70th birthday or something like that. He's been around for a long old time. Ed Askew, Ignatz, this one is Paul Metzger, kind of a lot of kind of freak folk type stuff came out on this Ocrana label. The kind of match of, is that the right way up? It is. The kind of match of medium and the music on there, I just absolutely love. I just think that's absolutely beautiful, the artwork. And
yeah, it's a classic sort of 30s, 40s sort of size for like,
maybe
music, maybe.
Yeah, I love the kind of conciseness and almost like kind of the cuteness of it, but I mean cute in a kind of like proper way. I kind of mean cute like in a way which feels really, I have just real affection for. This is the Ed Askew and Steve Gunn, actually.
Oh, Steve Gunn.
But yeah, whenever I find stuff on Ocrana,
so just quickly, how are you
love
spelling
it.
that label name?
Okraina, Ocrana.
Okay.
Love them. Often double inch, 12 inch, double. I think all of these are double 10 inch packs.
So could that have been a 12 inch then?
I think it's probably too big for a 12 inch, isn't it? 2 10 inches.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, it's a puzzler. I don't know. I'm not a technical guy.
No, no, I don't know. I don't know. The question always interests me because no one. It's a dismissed format by a lot of people. Actually, talking about record shops, you're from Reading. Did you ever go to Green River Records?
I'm not sure I went there so much, but I think I might have went there a fair bit, but I might just not know the name. Was that a record shop in an arcade in Reading?
Okay, well, I think so. I don't entirely know, but two people I spoke to worked in Green River through the late 80s.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah.
I'm thinking that was in a kind of old, dilapidated arcade, and I did go there, and I remember being your kind of typical indie record shop in a good way, in the sense that it repped indie music, but it also would just carry independent stuff. So you'd find a lot of hip hop there. You'd find a lot of even a bit of house music and stuff like that, and techno. So I'm gonna have to look that up, Joe. Yeah, you've reminded me of something.
I don't know it. It's just Anthea Leyland. She worked there. And,
right, really.
And the chap who your episode 44, I think episode 42, Daniel P. Carter, the Radio 1 rock show guy, worked there.
Fantastic. I haven't heard the name Green River Records for a while, so I'll probably Google that straight after we get off the call. But that would be good. Of course, the other 10-inch I would have, the immediate 10-inch which came to my mind was the untitled Slint 10-inch, but that's something which someone might have picked already. But that seems to me, I mean that Slint 10-inch of, was it Rhonda and Glenn? That seemed like a perfect marriage of like medium and like, it was really concise. There was not a note wasted on that 10-inch. That was what was so amazing about it.
Yeah, I'm on the fence with 10 inches. I've got some that I think are classic. I think is it Sign of the Dub, that 10-inch is perfect for it. For instance,
that's a nice one. Yeah.
And so your love of all the 12-inch drum and bass bits and bobs, enormously into the anonymity of it. Like, because for me, it's a world that is beautifully impenetrable. And there's something excellent about that. Even some of the proper albums, like the Ways of the Dragon records and all of those, still felt quite sort of like a world I could not ever enter, but I can listen to. So I'm entering it just through the music, and then it's something I find it absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, that was really powerful, and I suppose that's probably been romanticized and theorized to a big degree, but it's still nonetheless powerful. The way that at that time you'd have lots of people with lots of different pseudonyms. Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse is like, a kind of decent example. I think that was just foul play, but they would release things on different names. And let me show you something which is a really powerful example of that, actually, is another record which is one of my favorite drum and bass artists is Blame.
Right.
And this is by Blame and Justice. And it was just, you never knew, was Blame and Justice one person or two people? How come these words go so brilliantly together, Blame and Justice? Is that just coincidence, or is that deliberate? So it's all tracks written, arranged, and produced by Blame and Justice. So I guess it's sounding like two people. This record, Anthemia and Essence, is absolutely amazing. And I think it probably did play quite a big role in sucking you into that kind of world. It did. Of course, it's a little bit like with when people started listening to Underground Resistance. the kind of paucity of information makes you concentrate on the little bits of information all the more. So you would just think about, okay, well, this person's got a new pseudonym. So for instance, Groove Rider, the track I showed you is actually under the name Codename John. And it would always entice you, didn't it? You know, why have they picked this name? Why, you know, what can we read into that? What's their intentions? And I guess it did create this feel with drum and bass of, it did create this feel of kind of like this machine, which was always creating new kind of copies of itself. And yeah, people wrote about that quite a lot, of course. But you did have this feeling of this music, the music kind of just almost like spawning in a kind of almost like generated kind of way. It was so exciting, the way people were picking all these people creating all these new versions of themselves. You know, there's actually one person who I think has really excited me like that was the Leicester musician DJ SS. And DJ SS, he would do, there's one compilation he did where it was basically a compilation almost of himself, but just under loads of different names. And he always stuck in my mind because he did tracks under the name of, it was like LE15JH or something. It was a Leicester postcode, right? And so, you know, just always stuck in my mind that the way he'd almost just reduced this kind of artistic vision to just like a postcode of a place. Yeah. It was kind of cool. You can definitely get into those things in the same way that people get into science fiction, I guess, really. And you know, I wasn't deep into that kind of way of reading things, but it definitely added to the kind of mystique around it, for sure.
Absolutely. You're in on a secret you barely understand yourself. There's something quite magic about that. The Underground Resistance is a very good example, because I still kind of love that label, but I still don't really get it. And occasionally documentaries will appear and I sort of shy away from them a bit, because I just don't want to see a bunch of just blokes going, and then we pressed the keyboard and it made this. I don't want to know. You know.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
Just keep it secret, please. It's good.
Can I show you one more record?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this is a 7-inch, a kind of dancehall 7-inch from the Punchline label, which is a British label, and this is it's a bootleg really, but it's a kind of bootleg mashup type thing of. In fact, I'll show you the right version. By the great dancehall crew, the Heatwave, who are still around and doing great things now. And Punchline would release these, mashup versions of, this is the song Trick Me by Khalees, the R&B star. And it's the rhythm of Khalees's Trick Me, which is like a really kind of up-tempo reggae song, up-tempo reggae beat rather. And they've just put a load of dancehall MCs over it, including Beanie Man and TOK. And it's really awesome, this version, a kind of dancehall, a collision of dancehall and Khalees's track Trick Me. And yeah, one reason I show you this is the only track, it's the only record I've ever run home from a DJ gig to pick up. I was DJing one time in Brussels, an event which The Wire were involved with, and myself and Lisa Blanning, who were at The Wire at that time, were DJing. And I brought this because it always sounds amazing, it always sounds cool on any dance floor. And I realized halfway through I'd left it at the hotel, so I ran home to the hotel in the middle of the gig to get it. So it just has a special place in my heart, and it's really awesome. Trick Me Twice, the Heatwave remix. Sweet. Fantastic.
Ralph Bassclef was saying about how he used to work at a record shop in Bristol, and it would open quite early on a Saturday, and you'd get people from the club going straight from the club to the shop with a bass line in their mind and sing the bass line to him, and he'd have to know what the bass line was to give him the record from the shop.
Fantastic.
Like, have you got the one that goes? Oh yeah, you want this and this and this. Yeah.
So did he actually sell them the proper one, or if they were still high on drugs, you could just grab any 12-inch and just give it to them and say, this is what you want?
I think he was a professional. I think he considered himself the Shazam of the time.
his integrity was intact, I'm sure. Yeah.
So I have one more question about, actually, two things about The Wire.
Yeah, sure.
One was seeing, this is Richard Dawson, okay? It's a Richard Dawson album.
I remember that one, yeah.
Yeah, he put this one out himself, actually. I was just speaking to Matt from Pigs. He ended up putting it out on his label, reissuing it.
Oh, great. What label has it been reissued on?
Box.
Yep.
That was Matt from Pigs label.
I remember that strange thing coming into the office one time, yeah.
But really, all I was going to say was I saw Richard Dawson play at Super Normal Festival. And he played guitar, and it was one of the best things I've seen for a very long time. I thought it was incredible. But he said on the stage that one of the reasons he's got any success of late is because The Wire covered him.
Oh, wow.
I remember him saying it. I remember him saying it's totally blown up over the last year. The Wire did a piece on me, and it opened up every single avenue.
That's nice to hear. It's nice to hear when, I mean, I'm the editor of The Wire. I don't publish or own the magazine, but I think all of us, when you have the ability to play a valued part in the scene, that's something which we don't take lightly. That's cool to hear that from like Richard. He's like I remember that CD coming into the office, and it was Lee Etherington from Tusk Festival who was kind of pushing me quite a lot to say, you really should listen to this. And we caught on to what Richard was doing, and it was just a bit different to anything else, very idiosyncratic. It's really nice to hear him say that, but at the same time, it was his art, it is and was kind of uniquely his. We were hearing a lot of people at that time who were talking about the experience, like you were saying, actually, his live performance as well, just saying it was a unique atmosphere to anything else. And something interesting was happening there, wasn't it, with Richard Dawson, for sure.
Yeah, actually, the other one, just as an aside then, not what I was going to say, but it just popped into my head, was the Somerset duo or trio of Hacker Farm. You remember them? There was a 6 or 8 page feature in Wire magazine on Hacker Farm.
I remember them like it was yesterday.
Yeah, it was they had like one CD out, I think, and it was a photo of the roundabout just around the corner, like the Podmore roundabout, which is on the A303 just here, and it was an aerial photo of the Podmore roundabout. Yeah, and they'd put like UHF or something written in there.
You're next to the A303?
You what, sorry?
You're next to the A303?
Well, it's just down the road, like we're in Somerset.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some deep ley line business, isn't it?
Oh yeah. It's all new age around here. So when you held up those new age CDs earlier, I was like, yeah, this is a bit of me. But yeah, so you did a 6 or 8 page feature on Hacker Farm, and they started doing some pretty interesting things. I'm pretty sure off the back of that, they ended up doing the Tusk Festival and amongst a bunch of other things.
Yeah, so I can't take the credit for that at all, but I'll tell you one of the main people who can. But yeah, Hacker Farm are not really operating as a group anymore, but like Steve Farmer Glitch is still doing all kinds of interesting projects down in the West Country, isn't he, with technology and workshops and stuff like that. And
he has in Yeovil, there is a shopping centre called the Quidam Centre.
Right.
And in the Quidam Centre, there's a whole bunch of empty shops, and the people that own it prefer people being in the shops, not even paying rent, because it saves the owners of the mall money.
Yep.
Farmer Glitch has a shop in there, and it's full of all of his little knickknacks and whatnot that he makes.
Wow.
Like
Yeah, amazing.
Things, and it's got some of his old records and books and whatnot as well. And he did we've had at least one little secret gig in there with all the curtains shut, with like it'll come to me. A duo played in there just recently.
Yeah,
he's got this going just right in the center of the oval. It's really excellent.
Well, I have loads of good memories of hanging with Stephen at Supernormal, sometimes when it was like pissing down with rain. But yeah, Hacker Farm was an interesting one. I wasn't the editor at that time, but if I remember correctly, the idea was kind of brought to us by Matthew Ingram, aka Wobot, seasoned and really, kind of noted blogger and writer who started doing a blog probably around 1999, 2000. Amazing collector of records, much more than me. He gave me that Warp Drive remix actually, which is kind of mad because Matthew Ingram, he just gave me a 12-inch one time, which was really nice of him. And I don't know how but he gave me a remix of my favorite track of all time. How does that happen? That's crazy. Matthew Ingram's, kind of really, extraordinary individual. He came to us with that idea, I believe, of doing something on Hacker Farm because there were some other people involved in that feature who were also down in the West Country doing some weird and wonderful stuff. And so he kind of knitted them all together as a kind of scene piece, but not even really a scene piece, kind of micro scene piece. Yeah, it's a really interesting read, I think. Yeah,
no, it was good. Great pictures as well, because they made speakers out of like milk churns and whatnot.
That's right. Yeah. It was really fun stuff, and a lot of those people have gone on to do kind of interesting stuff. Yeah. Are you acquainted with Keck W of Hacker Farm?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like he and we did a CD together called Unruly Milk.
Okay, there we go. So you know all about Keck W, and another very idiosyncratic and unique individual.
Very much. And every time I go to Yeovil, like pre all this crap, every time I go to Yeovil, I would always see him in the comic shop there. Always bump into him. He draws for 2000 AD. No, he writes.
That's right.
Writes the stories for Judge Death, I think, or some 2000.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if he wrote or illustrated, but yeah, he's
the writer. Yeah,
a very big part of 2000 AD kind of culture, isn't he? He's written on and off quite a lot for the Wire magazine as well.
Right. Yeah. I think he does. Do you remember like those little Commando magazines? They're like little comic books, like war comic books. I've got a feeling he did one of those within the recent time. Like it's still going. Really
okay. Yeah. It's another subculture, but I don't know too much about really.
Not me. I don't know anything about it either. I'm going to step away from it. So my last thing about the Wire is, I want to book a back page ad.
Oh, okay.
Because Soul Jazz have it every single year since the beginning of time. So yes. I want to book August's.
Okay, well, I'd have to put you onto our ad people. But...
How come they have the back page every single month?
Well, I mean, that's
going back years here.
That's not
2008.
It longer than that, I think, Joe. With Soul Jazz, we've known Soul Jazz for a very long time. I mean, the thing about the Wire is which we do talk to people about, is there's a very quite a big distinction between the advertising and the editorial stuff, and so I'm not involved too much in the advertising really. A weird thing with the Wire is you could always look through an issue of the Wire and you'll find stuff which is advertised which is not reviewed, or you'll find stuff which is reviewed which is not advertised, and so there's quite a lot of independence between the two really. But yeah, I'll add people to talk to you, Joe.
genuinely only joking about that. I wouldn't want to steal their
It's
thunder
too late.
at all.
Too late, Joe.
I wouldn't want to steal their thunder. They've got it absolutely nailed down. It just amuses me. That's all. It's every single month. Fair play to them. Anyhow, it was really good talking.
Nice to talk to you, Joe. It's really, really nice to talk to you. Nice to catch up on, some of the kind of stories of some really interesting music. And yeah, I've really enjoyed watching your videos of going through people's record collections. And, perhaps we've kind of touched upon some individuals who have like record collections who probably a fair bit more impressive than me, to be honest with you.
It's not about the record collection, it's about the people. About what the people do. It's always about that. It's never about the records. It's a bit about the records. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll wave goodbye. I'll click stop.
Nice to talk to you.
And then we can say goodbye just quickly, properly afterwards. Okay. So wave goodbye. Bye-bye.
Nice one.